Hey Optimancers, Chris here. The Tal Dore campaign setting Reborn from Critical Role is now available on D&D Beyond. So I'm doing a series of videos covering the subclasses and feats in that supplement. And today I am going over the Oath of the Open Sea, a subclass for the very popular Paladin class. And I guess we should start with the tenets of the subclass. If your table actually polices tenets, these are going to be dead easy to follow. Stand against those who oppress others, and a bunch of vague stuff about listening to nature and being flexible with your goals. And yeah, for the most part, do what you want. Like when I read, the waters of the ocean can shift around any obstacle or become the most impassable obstacle of all. They carve away the land to reveal the secrets of the past, or swallow the truth and hide it forever. Not sure how that dictates your behavior. I guess be willing to shift unless you aren't, and uncover truths unless you hide them, reads more to me like an epigram than a tenet. Looking at the oath spells, I'm always glad to see Misty Step on a Paladin oath list. It just tends to be the type of spell that Paladins can make a lot of use, and their spell list doesn't cover this kind of spell. If the Paladin has a mount through Fine Steed, Misty Step also takes advantage of shared spells, so you can teleport with your mount. There are some ritual spells here, but just keep in mind, Paladins don't have ritual casting, so unless you have the ritual caster feat, just be aware, Augury and Commune with nature will require spell slots to cast. And I guess most notably, we have two unique spells here, Freedom of the Waves as a 3rd level spell, and Freedom of the Winds as a 5th level spell. Since these spells interact with some of the Oath of the Sea subclass features in important ways, I'm going to cover the spells after looking at the features. At level 3, the Oath of the Sea gets 2 options for using their Channel Divinity, and this is standard for Paladin subclasses. The first is Marine Layer. This causes your Paladin to be surrounded by a cloud of fog 20 feet around them in all directions using their action and lasting 10 minutes. The fog moves with your Paladin and heavily obscures the area, except for you or any creature within 5 feet of you who treat it as lightly obscured. And I'm going to be coming back to this feature in a moment. The other option is Fury of the Tides, which uses your bonus action, and for the next minute, once per turn, when you hit a creature with a weapon attack, you can push it up to 10 feet away from you, and if the attack pushes them into an obstacle, they take bludgeoning damage equal to your charisma modifier. And pushing can be really good, we know that, but the Paladins get 1 Channel Divinity per short rest, and Marine Layer is so good, I don't see why you just wouldn't use that consistently. So you raise your Marine Layer, and unless an enemy is adjacent to you, you're going to have advantage on attack rolls against them. This is going to make range attacks really good, or even your reach attacks. In addition, again, unless they're adjacent to you, they'll have disadvantage to attack you, and won't be able to target you with all kinds of effects. This will also mess up a lot of teleportation options for a lot of enemies, and your allies can benefit from this as well. They just have to stay within 5 feet of you, and they gain all the same benefits. Have the mage cast spells beside you, and they can't be counterspelled. Have the crossbow expert fighter stand beside you for permanent advantage on attacks. And unlike the Darkness and Devil's Sight combination, no feats required, no concentration required, and you can avoid hindering other members of your party. This, in my opinion, is the most powerful 3rd level Paladin feature in the game. I would say that maybe the Oathbreaker's dreadful aspect is in the same league, but otherwise, it's blowing all other Paladin subclasses out of the water, so to speak. At level 7, Aura of Liberation enhances your Paladin aura. Again, this is pretty standard. In this case, you and creatures within 10 feet of you can't be grappled or restrained, and ignore penalties to movement and attacks when underwater. Creatures already grappled and restrained when they enter the aura can spend 5 feet of movement to escape unless bound by magical restraints. So, thematically, totally get this. What's more iconic when it comes to sea monsters than giant squid or other tentacled monstrosities that grapple and restrain with their attacks? So, the elephant in the room is that creatures who are already grappled and restrained can spend 5 feet of movement to automatically escape, except that if you're grappled or restrained, your speed is 0, so you don't have that 5 feet of movement to expend. We see a similar issue, in fact, pretty much the same issue, with the Freedom of Movement spell that also uses similar wording. And the general consensus is you can spend the 5 feet of movement despite having a current speed of 0 because of specific versus general yada yada yada, And then once you're free and your movement is restored, then you subtract the 5 feet of movement you used to escape. So this would work the same way. So this is great. I mean, obviously, grappled and restrained happen a lot in D&D, but beyond that, you can build around this. For example, the web spell restrains enemies and allies alike, but you and your pals can set up a web and pass through as needed without hindrance, as long as everyone huddles around the paladin. An ally, or your paladin themselves, might actually want to take the grappler feat, as you can now use this second bullet point without becoming restrained yourself. I mean, in this case, there's even synergy with Marine Lair, because if creatures are dealing with heavy obscurement unless they come within 5 feet of you, well, if they come within 5 feet of you, now you can grapple and restrain them. So it's a really, really nice aura feature. And then at 15th level, Stormy Waters gives you a reaction when a creature moves in or out of your reach, causing a d12 bludgeoning damage, and they must make a strength saving throw or fall prone. So the obvious limitation here is that this requires your reaction. And you definitely already have a reaction option if someone leaves your reach, as in an attack of opportunity. And if you have the Polar Master feat, you may have the same option if someone enters your reach. And generally speaking, you are probably better off with a weapon attack given that option. Though I should mention that opportunity attacks can be avoided with Disengage or the Mobility feat, or there's a number of monster features that specify they have some special movement that doesn't provoke opportunity attacks, often through legendary actions, but I've never seen a feature that says it avoids the Stormy Waters feature of the Oath of the Sea Paladin. But whether a d12 damage and a potential proning is worth your reaction is going to depend on what other things you might need your reaction for. So this one's decent, but it's not nearly as powerful as what we've seen already. And then we have the 20th level capstone. So all paladins get some kind of limited duration, once per long rest feature at 20th level. Some require an action, others require a bonus action. Some can be used again with a 5th level slot, others can't. Some last a minute, others last 1 hour. But regardless of these variables, they all provide multiple benefits to the paladin for the duration. In the case of the Oath of the Sea, it's a 1 minute duration requiring an action to set up, and that's pretty much the worst case scenario. For the duration, you get advantage on strength athletics checks and gain a climb speed, or if you have a climb speed, then you double it. You have advantage on attack rolls if you're within 5 feet of a creature, as long as no other creatures are within 5 feet of you. Now, considering Marine Lair, you might want to expect that you're going to have allies within 5 feet of you. You can dash or disengage as a bonus action, and you have advantage on dexterity checks and saving throws. And yeah, this is not a standout among Paladin capstones, but it's not terrible, but there's nothing here that really stands out as super powerful considering the level and cost. So with the features out of the way, let's look at these subclass specific spells. Now, it's important to keep in mind that these are spells that have been created for this subclass, so other paladins aren't getting these spells. Now it does say here these can also be learned by druids, rangers, and sorcerers at the GM's discretion, but again, just keep in mind, created for this subclass. The first is Freedom of the Waves, a 3rd level spell you will automatically prepare at 9th level. Use your action, and then you create a 15-foot radius, 10-foot tall cylinder within 120 feet of you. Each creature in the area makes a strength saving throw, taking 2d8 bludgeoning damage and falling prone on a failed saving throw, and if they succeed, nothing happens to them. You can choose a number of creatures equal to your charisma modifier to automatically succeed on the save. So if you utilize the range, then this is awful. 2d8 damage and prone on a failed save, and nothing on a successful save for a 3rd level spell, that just blows. If you don't utilize the range, as in you cast it with you in the area, then you can teleport to an unoccupied space you can see within the spell's area. Now, if this spell was on a different subclass, I would probably note that teleporting 30 feet to a space you can see is something that can be very useful for a paladin that normally doesn't get these kind of options. But considering that you will automatically have Misty Step as an Oath of the Sea paladin, you could already do that as a bonus action using a lower level spell slot. So I really don't get this one. It's not providing anything of value considering the level of the spell, and the subclass it's being given to. And right here, there's some weird wording. You can choose a number of creatures equal to your spellcasting modifier to automatically succeed on the saving throw. Should that not read that you can choose a number of creatures up to your spellcasting modifier? Like the way this is written, let's say you have a +4 charisma modifier. Well, you either choose 0 creatures to make the saving throw automatically, or 4. So if you want to protect, say, 2 allies, then I guess you also need to protect 2 enemies, and that's weird. I'm assuming they mean up to your ability modifier, and that's definitely the way I would run it. Either way, on a Paladin that already has Misty Step, I think this is a bad spell. And then the 5th level spell, Freedom of the Winds. So this spell causes wind to wrap around your body, giving you a flying speed of 60 feet, using your concentration for up to 10 minutes. So, okay, like the fly spell, but self-only. And then check this out. Additionally, you have advantage on ability checks to avoid being grappled. So, when you're 17th level, the Oath of the Sea Paladin gets a spell specifically designed for this subclass that gives them advantage to avoid being grappled, despite having been immune to grapple for the past 10 levels. What? And advantage on saving throws to avoid being restrained or paralyzed. Again, immune to restrained for the past 10 levels. And when you're targeted by a spell or attack, you can use your reaction to teleport up to 60 feet to an unoccupied space you can see, and if this teleportation moves you out of range of the spell or attack, you're unaffected. But using this reaction ends the spell. So I have to assume they designed a spell before designing the 7th level feature, because having a spell specifically for the Oath of the Sea Paladin that's only gained after having immunity to both grappling and restraining, that gives you advantage on saving throws to avoid being grappled or restrained, makes no sense whatsoever. So essentially, you just ignore those parts of the spell. So now we have a 5th level fly spell, self-only, advantage against paralyzed, and a one-time reaction teleport to avoid a spell or attack that ends the spell. And that's a bit weak for the level once we remove the redundant stuff. So the unique spells I think are pretty disappointing. But that aside, as a subclass for Paladin, this is amazingly strong. The 3rd level Channel Divinity is the best of any Paladin subclass, and the 7th level Aura Enhancement is also terrific. This really seems like a Paladin subclass you take and multiclass out of. Maybe level 6 or maybe level 7. If I was to rank this among other Paladin subclasses, I can't ignore that its level 3 feature outclasses all the rest. I figure it's A tier for sure, and I do think the Watcher's 7th level aura is better than the Oath of the Seas, but I also think the 3rd level feature is good enough to edge out the Watcher's Paladin for top spot among Paladin subclasses, though it's close. And that's the Oath of the Sea Paladin. And in the next video in this series, I'll be looking at the Runechild Sorcerer, and I hope you'll join me. Otherwise, until next time, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks everybody, and I'll talk to you soon.